Sometimes just because you are a starting quarterback at a big name program that has years of experience and a lot of production, it doesn't automatically guarantee that you're going to be thought of as a highly touted quarterback prospect when draft time comes around. And when you look at Cody Kessler, you're talking about a kid that has started the past several years at USC, been a productive guy, big name program, but there's not a ton of draft buzz about him. And I find that kind of interesting, not to say that it's fully unmerited, because I don't know that from a talent standpoint, if you look at him, you really see a future franchise NFL quarterback. But I do think in some ways you could make an argument there is at least some starting quarterback potential at the NFL level. So I think when it comes to quarterback evaluations in this draft, an interesting guy might be Cody Kessler. Now, in terms of what I've seen out of him the past few years, here's what I like. I like his short and intermediate area accuracy. I think he's actually really good in a 5 to 15-yard window in terms of getting it to a spot, throwing it to his receiver's catch radius. Not only that, placing the ball pretty well. Also, again, from zero really actually to about 15 yards, he's pretty good. And he's actually very good in that way. He's one of the more accurate passers in this quarterback class, in my opinion, this year. I also think he's a little bit underrated in terms of his ability to move his feet. In part, I think his lack of size helps him a little bit in terms of his mobility because he is a little bit smaller. He could be a little bit quicker and a little bit more nimble and shiftier on his feet. I mean, he's not a tremendous athlete. He's not somebody that's going to burn the house down in terms of his awesome athletic skills, but he is a guy that can move on his feet. He's a guy that can occasionally at least pick up a couple yards on the ground. He's a guy that can extend plays out of the pocket and can throw on the move to his right or his left without sacrificing a whole lot of accuracy, again, in that short to intermediate area. This is a guy as well that I think at times was able to demonstrate an ability to go through his progressions, be able to check off, to be able to read the defense, to be able to move the safety with his eyes, go through his progressions. And you would hope that from an experienced quarterback coming from a big name program at USC that he would be able to do something like that. And he was able to do that. Also I like his ball security in the overall sense that he doesn't put the ball at risk a whole lot. He's a pretty good game manager. He doesn't take a lot of chances with the football. He's not somebody you envision that would put the ball at risk a lot. Not a huge fumble threat. More importantly, I guess you would say, is he's not a huge threat to get the ball picked off a ton because he's just not going to make a ton of bad decisions. He's not going to make a ton of risky throws, which can be good, which can be bad. But in terms of NFL head coaches, a lot of times they sit there and they like those quarterbacks that are mistake limited. And Cody Kessler is one of those mistake-limited quarterbacks, probably one of the best mistake-limited quarterbacks in this entire draft class. He just doesn't put the ball at risk very often. And then again, you're talking about a guy with several years of big school experience at USC as a starting quarterback, playing in a major conference in the Pac-12, playing against big-level competition for the past several years. This is a guy that's been through a lot, so he's come out of the other end of it, and I think teams will like the fact that they will view him in terms of from a maturity standpoint, a football intelligence standpoint, that he's going to be more well-equipped and more well-prepared for the NFL level than other guys are, and I do think that's a true assessment. But there are certain limitations to his game. In terms of my biggest question marks for him, first you got to look at size. I mean, he's maybe 6'1", 220 pounds, so he's got decent bulk on his frame, but again, you start talking about that height concern. I don't think it's the be-all, end-all, but there are going to be some teams concerned about it. My biggest concern with him, my single biggest concern with him is arm strength, or in Cody Kessler's case, a clear-cut lack of arm strength, especially when you get past 15 yards. Even in that 0 to 15-yard throwing window that I talked about, where he was really good in terms of his short and intermediate area accuracy and ball placement, the one thing that concerns me is when you watch him on film relatively consistently, especially if he has to throw the ball out at all, is that ball is in the air a while. And my concern is that at the NFL level, to be able to get away with that type of lack of arm strength, you have to be incredibly accurate. You have to be incredibly pinpoint. You have to be able to anticipate what's going on. You have to be able to throw your receivers very open. You got to trust the timing. You got to run a lot of option routes with your receivers. You got to do a lot of different things. And I just have some concerns because I don't know if Cody Kessler is that accurate at this point to overcome that lack of functional arm strength. And in particular, you see that come into play when he's trying to stretch the ball down the field. My concern for him, if you try to make him a starting quarterback at the NFL level, is he can't really stretch out the defense effectively past 15 yards. And even if he does try to do it, because of that lack of arm strength, what does he do? His throwing motion is going to get longer. He's going to try and put more effort into it, just like with a baseball bat swing or a golf club swing. What's going to happen when you do that? You try to overcompensate by tightening up and trying to get your swing longer and everything else. You end up being less accurate and many times even lose velocity and lose club head speed or bat speed or ball speed. So I really have concerns about Kessler being able to be a starting quarterback because my fear would be is that teams would be able to cheat up with their safeties, that the throwing windows that are already not very big would get even smaller, and then it's going to be really hard for him to fit those balls that he throws into those shrinking and small throwing windows. Because, again, his downfield accuracy doesn't have a great arm in terms of strength, and then on top of that, not going to be very accurate the farther down the field that you go. You just wonder if this is a guy that's really cut out physically in terms of natural arm talent to play at the NFL level. Another thing that concerns me about him as well is in the pocket. He's not a very poised individual in the face of the blitz. Sometimes I saw a guy that, starting quarterback for 3-4 years, should have been better, should be more comfortable in the pocket, in the face of pressure, whether it's coming from the outside or up the middle, than he actually is. And then you look at him, too, because of that lack of arm strength, he really is a check down king, a la Alex Smith. And, when you talk about spending a high pick on a quarterback, do you want a guy that you can maybe win with, but you have to mask some of his deficiencies and you have to accentuate other positives and there are just certain things you can't do and there are certain limitations on your offense? Or would you rather not draft that guy high and take him much lower because you view him as more of like a backup quarterback that if your starter gets hurt, you can come in, trust that backup to help you win the field position battle, maybe take advantage of a situation here and there, but he's not going to shoot you in the foot because at the end of the day, if his primary is not there, he's going to throw to the running back in the flat. He's going to throw to his hot read. He's going to throw to his secondary guy in a short area. Cody Kessler was a king of checkdowns at USC, and he probably would have to be more of the same in terms of the NFL level. In terms of an arm talent type of standpoint, he reminds me a lot of Alex Smith. Now, obviously, Alex Smith is 6'4", 6'5", much bigger, more natural from a physique standpoint in terms of a franchise NFL quarterback, a starting NFL quarterback. But in terms of the arm talent, I think there are a lot of similarities there in terms of the lack of arm talent. That with Alex Smith, he's pretty accurate in that 0 to 15-yard window. But once you start going past 15 yards, you're really gambling because he just can't stretch defenses with his arm vertically. And when you do ask him to, and you ask him to put more zip on the ball, it can really potentially affect his velocity. And as a result, he's a guy that relies a lot on the check down. So in a lot of 3rd and 8 situations, he's throwing a lot of 2-yard dump passes. From a arm talent standpoint, mostly, that's who Cody Kessler reminds me of. Now, that's not to say you can't win some football games with a guy like that at the NFL level. If you have other things in place and you do other things well, with Alex Smith, same thing with Cody Kessler. Not a guy that's going to turn over the ball a lot, not going to put the ball in a lot of bad situations. Sometimes the best play on 3rd and long is to set up the punt team, but you're never going to get anywhere in terms of winning a championship with that type of guy either. I look at Kessler, and if he was 6'4" and he had a stronger arm, it'd probably be, a day 2 pick in this draft. But to me, you just look at that overall lack of arm talent. There are some things there, again, from a football intelligence and leadership standpoint that you like, the ability to manage a game and understand game situations. The fact that he doesn't turn the ball over a lot is very appealing, even if it is because of a lack of arm strength. At the end of the day, if you play in certain West Coast type of offenses where you primarily are focused on timing routes and 5, 10, 15-yard throws, a Kessler can survive in that type of system. And in that case alone, I think there is some potential for him to at least be a low-end starting quarterback at the NFL level. But those systems are few and far between, and in general, you need guys that can stretch the field vertically in today's NFL. And I just wonder if Cody Kessler will ever be able to do that. To me, he's another day 3 talent. A guy that worst case scenario develops maybe into a solid backup down the road at the NFL level, but not a guy that you would ever want to hinge your hopes on as a starting quarterback. And even if you did find yourself in a situation where he was your starter, he's that type of starter that is fringe, that is borderline, that you're always going to be looking to replace. So to me, you're looking at a 6th round talent at quarterback. Maybe you take him in round 5 if you really like him. If you don't, maybe he's a 7th round talent. Maybe he's not even a draftable player. Maybe he's a priority free agent arm. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if that's what he ended up being. But to me, I will still say, because of some of the positives he does bring to the table, I do think he's a draftable prospect. But I personally wouldn't touch him before round number 6.